closing statement?
That was, we've been listening to Amber Fairley, who represents Robert Springsteen, sentenced to death.
This is a statement of Forrest Welborn to this honorable court. My name is Forrest Welborn. Because of the many emotions that I have today, I've asked my lawyer to read my statement. Only 4 weeks after these 4 girls were killed on December 6, 1991, I was made a suspect in what has become known as the Austin Yogurt Shop murders. Almost 8 years later, on October 6, 1999, I was arrested and charged with killing these 4 girls. Before I talk about the effect these accusations have had on my life, I have to say that I feel so sorry for the families of the victims of this horrible crime. It must be a terrible thing to lose a child, especially in such an awful way. I wish them peace and a chance for closure now that the true killer has been identified. From the very beginning, and for almost 35 years since I was first accused of this crime, I have always maintained my innocence. I have never claimed or said that I was involved in the murders in any way, because I wasn't. I have never said that Maurice or Michael or Robert committed the murders. The testimony given by Detective Dayna Jackson here in court today conclusively shows that I am innocent of this crime. His testimony also shows that Maurice, Michael, and Robert are innocent of the crime. Detective Jackson's testimony proves that I have always told the truth. When the murders happened, I was 15 years old. At that time, I had only one person who I would call a friend. That was Maurice Pierce. The Austin Police Department detectives put so much pressure on Maurice to confess, more pressure than Maurice could handle. So the person I thought was my best friend told the APD detectives that I was involved in this crime. I believe that Maurice said this just so the APD detectives would let up on him. I believe Maurice was scared to death. The APD detectives made my best friend implicate me in this heinous crime, and I lost the one friend that I had. Despite being innocent of this crime and having nothing whatsoever to do with it, my life was dramatically changed long before I was arrested in 1999. Once I was made a suspect in 1992, I was unable to continue going to school. I tried twice to complete the 8th grade, but was unable to continue attending school because of the things that people said to me and about me and how they treated me because they believed that I was one of the killers. Because I was made a suspect in these murders, I lost the opportunity to obtain an education. I also lost the opportunity to have a normal social life. As soon as someone knew that I was accused of this crime, they would stop talking to me and alienate me. Some people have even become hostile toward me, believing that the accusations against me were true. Because I was accused of this crime, I lost the opportunity to have a relationship or start a family of my own. The relationships I've had over the years have maybe lasted 6 months at the most. Not only did I lose the opportunity to get an education or have any kind of a social life, I have also been frequently harassed by law enforcement officers, especially in Travis County and Caldwell County. Not long after the murders happened, APD detectives would pick me up as I was walking to school in order to interrogate me and try to convince me that I was guilty of a crime I had nothing to do with. I was just a 15-year-old kid when I was first accused. I had no idea what rights I had. The APD detectives knew I was a minor, but didn't tell me I had the right to have my parents and a lawyer present when they questioned me. Even though they knew or should have known not to question me without my parents or a lawyer present, they did anyway. They knew that because I was a child, I would comply with their demands and answer their questions. On one instance, APD detectives even took me to the burned remains of the yogurt shop and tried to convince me to confess that I committed the crime. They knew or should have known that their actions were violations of my civil rights. They knew or should have known that their actions were wrong. Through the 35 years since I first was accused of these crimes, harassment by law enforcement became my norm. On most occasions, for example, when I've been pulled over, usually for no reason or a minor traffic offense, I've been asked to remain in my vehicle by the officer pulling me over so the officer could obtain backup. When the backup officer would arrive, both officers would typically approach my vehicle with weapons drawn. In addition to being pulled over for no reason, I've been wrongfully detained and beaten by police officers on numerous occasions. After having to quit school, I had to find a way to make a living. I enjoy working on cars and motorcycles, so I started a repair shop in Lockhart. But like the law enforcement officers in Travis County, the Lockhart police seemed to believe that because of the accusations against me, they were authorized to harass me, and they did. It was commonplace when I lived in Lockhart to be pulled over by law enforcement almost once a week. I was periodically arrested on no evidence and incarcerated even though the law enforcement officers knew or should have known that my conduct was not criminal. As you can imagine, it was impossible to develop a good reputation as a businessman when I was being arrested on a regular basis. I tried to develop my repair shop at 2 locations in Lockhart. My efforts ended when I was arrested in 1999 after formal charges were made against me by the Travis County District Attorney's Office. On the day of my arrest, I was taken from my place of business without even being given the opportunity to lock the doors to my shop. By the time my family was able to raise the bond to get me out of jail and I was able to get back to my shop, all my tools had been stolen. Over the last 35 years, I've tried different jobs. Because of the accusations against me, I found it difficult to keep jobs because of my undeserved reputation. So I've tried to find jobs where I work for myself. When I could not find work, I've had to live on the streets or out of my car. I've had to go my entire life being treated as a guilty murderer by the public and by law enforcement. I'm thankful that today I'll be declared innocent of a crime I had nothing to do with. Despite the fact that actual murder has been identified and that there's no support or evidence to support the belief, unfortunately, in the minds of some, I will always be thought of as a murderer. This is wrong, but it's the life that I have to live. In closing, I want to thank Detective Jackson for solving this crime. I hope that the work in solving this crime brings peace to the families of the girls. I'm hopeful that being declared innocent of this crime today brings peace to me too. Thank you.
Mr. Goodson, do you have a witness you would like to call?
That was attorney Steve Goodson, who has essentially become a friend of Forrest Welborn. He, until recently, did not officially represent him. Last week, I had an opportunity to interview Forrest Welborn and met his mother. Her name is Sharon, and she's about to make her comments now. She told me a very emotional story that she planned to share with the court now.
I'm Sharon Shipman. Forrest Welborn is my youngest son, my youngest child. First, I want to thank DA Jose Garza and Detective Dan Jackson for following through to the resolution of this case. Also want to thank the Innocence Project of Texas, especially Michael Ware, and attorney Steve Goodson for their support and assistance in this process of legal innocence and exoneration. Additionally, Robert Eisenhower Ramirez, may he rest in peace, and Linda Eisenhower Ramirez, who were God's blessings to us after Forrest's arrest in 1999. And a thank you to all the loyal family and friends who stood by us through all these years. This nightmare should have never happened. These young girls should have never lost their lives. The nightmare for my son Forrest and our family should have never happened either. Forrest never confessed to this crime, as you've heard, nor did he say he knew others who were involved. While he wasn't put through a legal trial or convicted in court, he was harmed by the interrogations, the arrest, 2 months in jail, and the certification hearings. He has suffered immensely for 34 years, not only from the policing and legal system, but also because he was convicted by much of the public and media. I'm so proud of Forrest for never wavering on his innocence in this horrible crime, even when he was often pressured to save himself by confessing. He was offered a plea deal by the assistant DA if he would tell them what they needed to hear. Not the truth, but what they needed to hear. His dad and I were in the room when that offer was made, but later in court it was denied that a plea offer was ever given him. Forrest was 15 when first questioned in this case. He was also approached by detectives parked on the street as he walked to school, told to get in and go for a ride. He was questioned then, still 15 years old, without his parents' knowledge. Being so young, he didn't know he could decline. He was also devastated about these murders, afraid of what had happened in his neighborhood to girls his age and some from his school. And he wanted to be helpful. He knew he had nothing to do with it, so thought it could only help to cooperate. But from that moment, his life changed. Over many years, detectives subjected Forrest and his family to pressure, insisting we say that he confessed and that he was involved. It was heartbreaking, frustrating, and downright scary to see Forrest suffer for the rest of childhood and his entire adult life. I could feel his anxiety, depression, stress, and anger, and it was hard for him to trust anyone. These emotions trickled down to all his relationships throughout these 34 years, affecting every aspect of his life. He constantly had strangers approach him about the case, most often unpleasant encounters. He also lost relationships and friendships over the years. The knowledge that much of the public and even some extended family and friends believed the story that he was involved weighed heavy on all of us.